Hey, what's already? Welcome back to News Dose. And yeah, the Game Awards just happened, and truthfully, it's pretty much everything that I expected it to be. You know, there is a reason that I always try to caution hype for Jeff Keighley's showcase. It's because they're always cut from the same cloth. They're far too long with really little to justify their length. Now, if you like the big spectacle that the Game Awards offers, then yeah, you might really enjoy the showcase, and hey, that's perfectly fine, each to their own. But there are a few things that I want to talk about. First of which is the highlights. I mean, there are a few games that I thought really stood out and I think are worth talking about. But something else that I noticed is that a lot of the game industry is starting to shy away from the Game Awards for some of their bigger announcements. And I think Xbox was probably the most obvious. Now, I'll get into that here in just a little bit and what's happening with all that, but let's just go and get right into the highlights. The first of which is a brand new game, Bradley the Badger, which comes from the creator of the Mario Plus Rabbids series. Now, I think that alone is a good sign. I mean, those are definitely good games. But there's another reason that this one caught my attention, and that's because it seems to be loosely inspired by Conker's Bad Fur Day. Yeah, this is a satirical platformer just like Conker, and even the weapon of choice is a frying pan. I mean, that's a little bit on the nose, and even more so is that the entire idea of this game is a fan-requested sequel for Conker. I mean, for years there's been this idea among the fan base that a new Conker game could work if he were to just go to different video game worlds like Gears of War, Halo, and all these other Xbox-related IPs, since, of course, they own Conker. And that's exactly what Bradley the Badger is based on. He's going to all of these different video game worlds that apparently have been stuck in development hell. They showcased The Last of Us, a Cyberpunk, and a Bloodborne-based world, so I mean, I think this is a really fun idea on paper. They could do some really cool things with this idea. So I think it's going a little bit under the radar right now, but it could end up surprising a lot of people when it eventually releases. Now, the Tomb Raider games also officially got announced, and I say that because they leaked before the showcase, and those leaks were 100% accurate. They did, in fact, announce a remake of the first game, which honestly, I think it kind of needs. They've been remastering the original games, and I think that's really cool, but for anybody who didn't grow up with those games, they're kind of difficult to go back to because of the controls are a little bit rough, to say the least. So I'd say this is an opportunity for them to modernize one of the most iconic games of all time. And if they can find success with this remake, then they can kind of do the Resident Evil thing where they remake each game over the next decade plus. I think that could be a really good strategy for the Tomb Raider franchise, but yeah, it will release in 2026, and then a year later, the next brand new Tomb Raider game will launch as well. Now, its trailer was more so done in CGI, so I need to see more of it, but Tomb Raider is definitely back in a major way. Now, Star Wars Fates of the Old Republic also got announced, and while there isn't really any new gameplay per se, this announcement was still very exciting because Casey Hudson is the director. Now, for those that don't know, he was the director for the original KOTOR and also for the original Mass Effect trilogy. So while technically this is not a KOTOR 3 by name, it however does have what might be even more important, and that is the creator itself. I've talked about this in the past, but as I've gotten older, one thing that I've really learned about gaming is that studio names are only just that. You know, at the end of the day, if the most important creators leave a company, then they're really not the same company anymore. That's why studios like BioWare is not the same BioWare that they were back in the early 2000s. Very different people are working at that company now. But here we are, and one of the people that made BioWare and KOTOR just so special in the first place is working on another Star Wars The Old Republic game. So there is a reason to be at least hopeful for Fates of the Old Republic. Then also Resident Evil 9 got another gameplay reveal. This is by far my most anticipated game for 2026, and that continues to be the case because not only does it look fantastic, but now also Leon Kennedy has officially been revealed. He is much older now, and it kind of makes me wonder if we'll also see Ada Wong at some point. You know, most of the time when Leon is around, Ada isn't all that far behind. So I think it'd be really cool to see those two on screen together once again after all of these years later. But yeah, Resident Evil 9 looks absolutely amazing, and I'll just leave it at that. I didn't really need to see this one to buy into it, but still nice to see Leon back in Resident Evil. Now, Capcom was pretty busy at the Game Awards, though. They also revealed Pragmata, and as much as I love Capcom, I'm a little bit concerned about this game. I know they want it to be their next big new IP, but I've not really seen a lot of love for it online. I mean, it looks okay, but I don't think that it has truly impressed a lot of gamers yet. Now, to be completely fair, it does have some new ideas, and it could be a lot better in the hands of players when we eventually get it. So I'm still curious if it'll work out. I think reviews could be very important for this game, but so far there's just not been a lot of fanfare, so I am a little bit concerned if it'll actually find success. However, they also announced a new Mega Man game. Yeah, this was one of the most welcome surprises of the night. I know Mega Man fans have been begging for a new entry, and I guess Capcom just kind of realized that they still have the Mega Man series and that these games probably don't cost all that much to make. So hey, let's just get another entry out there. I mean, all things considered though, it looks a lot like Mega Man 11, which I think is perfectly fine. That was a really good game. I like its art style. But the only thing that's disappointing about this announcement is that its launch is for 2027. When they first showed it, I was kind of expecting 2026, but hey, still a little ways away. But even still, a simple confirmation has to be great for Mega Man fans out there. I mean, if I were to ever get a similar announcement for Banjo-Kazooie, yeah, I'd be head over heels. Larian Studios, the same studio behind Baldur's Gate 3, also announced their next game. The statue tease was, in fact, Divinity. Now, I'm not going to show the trailer on screen just because it was very graphic, and YouTube might not like that, but it was only CGI anyways. There's no gameplay or anything like that, but interestingly, it's not titled Divinity Original Sin 3. So I'm thinking maybe it could be a spin-off from their typical turn-based games. You know, maybe this time it's more of an action RPG because they are saying that it's their biggest game ever. And depending on how you interpret that, it could mean several different things. For me, though, I almost wonder if they're possibly referring to a change of genres because action RPGs do tend to cost more money, hence their biggest game ever. Either way, they're an incredible studio, and I'm really excited to see some gameplay in the future. Now, one other game that I want to quickly highlight is another title that's going a little bit under the radar, and this is a new space co-op game in the same vein as Split Fiction. It has that forced split screen to it, which is seeing a rise in usage. I've noticed various different developers are starting to try that same formula because, I mean, it's really good, clearly. But this is a new Switch 2 exclusive titled Orbitals. It's got this anime-like spin to it, so it has a nice, pleasing art style, and I'm not saying that it's going to be a Game of the Year contender or anything like that, but I think it's worth keeping an eye on. It could be a fun game when it releases in 2026. There you go, though. Those were my big highlights, all wrapped into, about 7 or 8 minutes, which is kind of crazy, considering the Game Awards is 3+ hours long. I mean, you would think there would be more highlights, but no, most of the stuff that they showed wasn't all that interesting. I mean, there were updates for games like Batman Legos, which I think continues to look good. Sony also had their new live service game from Bad Robot Games. I thought it looked very generic. It did not stand out at all. And really just speaking of that, the Game Awards ended the showcase on a live service project from some of the old Titanfall developers. It's Highguard. It's kind of this mixture of fantasy with a shooter, and I don't know. It looks promising, but I don't think it was necessarily mind-blowing in the way that they hyped it up to be the final announcement of the night. To me, it's kind of one of those we'll wait and see type of things. It is free to play, so I wish them the best. But overall, this was just a typical Jeff Keighley showcase. Now, I will say that I was really happy for Sandfall Interactive. Expedition 33 pretty much swept the awards, and I'm sure some people probably didn't like that more love wasn't spread across multiple games, but in this case, I do think that it was well-deserved, especially given that they were working with a lot less money than all of these AAA studios that pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into their games. Meanwhile, Sandfall Interactive was built on passion and had a budget of less than $10 million. That's just incredible to think about, and to see them win all these awards is just, really cool to see. But one thing that I really noticed about last night is that there were a lot of no-shows. And what I mean by that is that there were a lot of notable names that either completely skipped the Game Awards or they kept their presence minimal. I mean, okay, Sony, Sega, and Capcom, they showed up. But other companies like Xbox, Nintendo, Square Enix, Ubisoft, and even EA had very minimal participation. And it's not like those publishers don't have 2026 games to show. They absolutely do, but they chose to skip the Game Awards, and I think that's very noteworthy. In fact, Xbox actually announced their next showcase right before the Game Awards started. The next Xbox Direct will air in January as expected, and they even confirmed that they're shipping a lot of games in 2026, which includes Forza Horizon 6 and Gears of War E-Day. So it sounds like they're not even going to be able to fit all of their games into that single Direct. Instead, they're going to likely use their summer showcase for anything that they don't announce in January. But I say all that because it highlights a problem that all of these publishers have with the Game Awards. The fact is that the Game Awards is far too expensive, and these publishers don't really need the Game Awards to show their games in the first place. They can do their own showcases or reveal their games at cheaper events instead. I mean, I'm willing to go out on a limb that Square Enix will reveal some of their games at the Xbox Summer Showcase, or an upcoming Nintendo Direct, or even an upcoming PlayStation State of Play. These publishers are probably more willing to reveal their games at one of those events, and that's a problem with the Game Awards. It's really one of the main reasons that the Game Awards is mostly fluff, because companies are now choosing to skip it. Either which way, though, I'm going to go and give the Game Awards a C-. Now, that actually might be a little bit generous, but like I said, it was pretty much everything that I expected it to be. So at the bare minimum, I didn't leave disappointed, which is probably better than I've felt in previous years. But hey, let me know what you all think. What letter grade would you give the Game Awards for 2025? Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.